I always explain to parents that the whole point of the Divorce Act, of the Family Law Act, dealing with parenting and child support as well, all of that is the goal through this whole process is to do less harm to those children. We want to keep them as safe in the same position as they've always been in, as they've been accustomed to, I guess, really. Which is like child support. We want to make sure they're still in hockey. Just because you broke up, you still get to do hockey. You still get to go dance. You still get to see mom and dad. And that's the whole point. They didn't do this. And I try to explain that to parents. Like, these kids didn't do this. This isn't their fault. Don't punish them for it. And that's how these kids feel sometimes. Like, well, and they're just left in the middle. And it's not fair.
Welcome to Access to Justice. I'm your host, Heather Malarick of Merrick Law. My co-host is Evan Clark of Kahane Law. We're joined today by a very special guest, Kim McDonald of McDonald Advisory. Kim's a financial advisor and insurance advisor with Raymond James Limited. We're a Canadian podcast with a mission to educate Canadians about the law. We interview experts in law, mental health, and finance, focusing on topics that create the greatest barriers to entry into the justice system. You can find us on YouTube, on our A2J podcast channel, and online at a2jpodcast.com. Hi, Kim and Evan. How are you guys doing today?
It's a little smoky out there today. I think we've got some BC wildfires rolling in. Other than that, we're happy and healthy, and I guess let the good times roll with these like multiple weeks of consecutive 27 degrees playing out.
Kim, did you bark at the beginning of your response?
Yes, when I'm angry, I bark.
That's how hot it is.
Just barking mad. Wait, usually means something else.
It's a French bulldog, George Costanza. I've got no control over the animals that reside in my home.
Nice. Well, Heather, thanks for asking. I feel terrible. Last night I got my second shot, and I was totally fine until about half an hour ago. And now I feel just crummy. But I'm excited to be here and talk with our guest.
Yes, I'm so pleased to welcome our guest today. We have Jeff Keller joining us today. He is a lawyer at the Family Law Office, where he's been practicing, focusing on being independent legal counsel for children for about the last 11 years. He's been a practicing family lawyer for about 16 years. And prior to private practice, he spent all sorts of time in the world of academics, teaching university courses. He worked for the Court of Appeal as legal counsel, and then executive legal officer for the Chief Justice of Alberta. So he's had all sorts of fancy law jobs. And he and I had the pleasure of working together for close to a decade at Family Law Office. So credentials aside, I know firsthand that he's a very smart and lovely person. So I'm excited to have him here to chat with us today. We're happy to have Jeff here to pick his brain about child's counsel in family law proceedings. So I guess that's where we're going to start off. Do either of you have any questions to start Jeff off today?
I would love to know about Jeff's artwork behind him. It's a statement piece, and it's talking to me.
It actually is. This was a gift from a private law firm I worked at for my 40th birthday. And it's an artist that a friend, one of the other lawyers in the office, had one of his pieces. And I was always admiring it. And it turned out he's also an HIV positive artist from Toronto. And I've been associated with the AIDS movement for years. And so I just fell in love with this guy and his art. So for my 40th birthday, they got me this original piece. I feel
Nice.
very lucky to have that, yes.
That's
It
very
is.
And it's huge. As you can see, it takes up the wall of my dining room. But yeah,
Yeah, for those
Yeah.
of our listeners that are actually listening, it's like a gorgeous kind of white background with just colorful strokes everywhere, bit of an abstract piece. It's lovely.
thanks. It is one of my faves.
I know that you have quite an eye for art and a beautifully decorated home, Jeff, but you also, I think like your garden rivals your home. So I know that's another way you like to spend your time. How's your garden doing this summer with all this heat?
Okay, I don't want to look at my water bill. It's been, well, it was 37 degrees for a while there. So it got so hot. I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning with the sprinklers on. I've been watering nonstop. So it's actually really lush oasis still. But at a cost. But also it's been so hot that I don't go out there and do a lot of cutting back and stuff. So it's actually I'm just letting it go crazy this year. And it's kind of cool.
Pretty wild back there.
Yeah.
Nice. Might have to come check it out.
Yes, for sure.
So, Jeff, you have been around the block legally.
Sure, we could say that.
And obviously you're at the family law office now, and so I'm assuming you're there because you want to be there, but do you have any other of those experiences that you've really enjoyed through your legal career?
I've enjoyed all of them in some way or fashion or form, for sure, absolutely. I mean, working at the Court of Appeal is what an honor, you know what I mean? And huge. Like the Chief Justice was my mentor, and I still am in contact with her sometimes, getting advice and stuff. To work with those brilliant people, be that close working with them was amazing, especially early in my career. So I learned so much from them, which I still carry with me today. So that's a cool, like just an amazing experience. Teaching is fun. I love teaching. I enjoy working with people and teaching and stuff. So I've still been doing some of that with student legal services, right? But this, working with children now, and that's why I'm at Legal Aid, is because I had the opportunity to be able to do it full time. Working just with children is my fave, for sure. Working with kids, how can that be bad, right? I have my legal office at a law firm has crayons, and Heather's been there, she's seen it. I have crayons, I have stuffed animals, I have toys, I have Lego. We do Lego in color. What a great legal career that is, right? And I'm actually helping these kids, so I really feel like I'm actually making a true difference. And most of us go into law school sort of with those rose-colored glasses that we're going to make a difference when we're done, and we're going to be amazing when we're done.
Yeah.
So if I can actually work with these kids and help them, yeah, I've done more than enough.
Yeah, what a lovely role that is. So, I mean, maybe let's start there, if you don't mind, Jeff. Like, how do you get involved with a family that might be going through the law process for separation or divorce?
Well, you have to be ordered by the court. So your parents can't just come wandering in and say, my kid needs a lawyer, and hire a lawyer. You have to get a court order. That's partly to ensure there's no bias. Like, it would be, the appearance of bias would be there if dad dragged his kid in to say you, Heather, and say, you're going to represent my kid and you're going to do this.
Right.
That
here's the retainer, here's the money.
Right. I'm paying
go
you
ahead
to do
and
this. Exactly.
you go ahead and tell me what I want to hear.
Exactly. So the courts have made it clear for counsel to be appointed for the children, it has to be by a court order. So you can make an application to the court to have counsel appointed and have to make an argument why. There's factors to consider, and give the list of the factors. At Legal Aid, one of the big factors we rely on is it's high conflict. So mom and dad just can't get along to the point that they've lost sight of what their kids even need or want. It's like, bring someone in to talk to these kids and find out what's going on.
That's really interesting to hear, because it's pretty common, I think, that parents or a parent may want their child's voice to be heard, and they'll ask. I received that question today, actually. How can I get my child's voice heard by the court?
Right. Oh, and lots of people do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I mean, I talked about a practice note 7, which we can discuss, I guess, if we want to. But to get a lawyer appointed for the child, it's good to hear that is only that, or I shouldn't say only, but one of the significant factors that you guys look at the family law office is it a high conflict case?
Yeah, because and most of the judges are doing that too, because do we want to drag these kids in to this fight if we don't have to, right? So it's kind of like, if things are going along well, and you're going to you have to listen to my kid, you have to hear what my kid has to say, but it's like, yeah, but it's not that high conflict, it's not that bad, we know what's going on, we can figure this out without bringing them in, because that's stressful for a child to be stuck in the middle of their parents' divorce. So do that. So but I was just going to say that you need a court order. It has to be ordered by the court, but lots of parents too will just do a consent order. So if the parents agree and want, they'll do a court order, but just by consent, and then we'll do it that way as well. And then you agree to find a lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it comes from the motivation to do it. I'm saying, I guess it comes from, and the reason often it's one parent that's wanting this to happen is because they're hearing something from their child that agrees with what they want that the other party is opposing.
Yeah.
And from your experience of working with children, working in family law, and working in high conflict cases, what would you say in that kind of a situation? Not necessarily like, you don't have to give us, totally hypothetical, but what would you say to that kind of a situation?
I warn parents, and they do bring that up, so to take some of what their children are saying with a grain of salt, use a bit of caution, because sometimes kids they know what's going on. Like I said, we want to keep them out of it, but they're in it, right? I mean, they know their parents are divorced, they know there's arguing going on, they know there's stuff happening. So lots of times, lots of children will play peacekeeper and try to bring the stress down, try to bring the conflict down. They don't want any more fighting, so they're going to tell dad what they think dad wants to hear. But then they're also going to turn around and tell mom what they think she wants to hear. And you see that a lot. We always do. She told me this. No, she told me that. And right, and that's often when a judge will go, oh, why don't we get someone to talk to that kid then, right? Because there's mixed messages happening, and you'll find out, and lots of times, because these kids. Through doing this, I always knew kids were smart, but some of these kids, they're really smart. Like we do not give them enough credit sometimes. And I sit down with them, and they're open and honest about what they're doing sometimes, and they know darn well they're manipulating this situation. I have one child, I love her. She keeps telling, I've had her for 5 years. So she started when she was 10, she's now 15. For the past 5 years, the parents are still fighting about stuff. She's doing her parenting, and every instructions I get from her is, don't you dare tell mom and dad or the judge what I really want until they get the other stuff figured out. She's trying to get them to figure everything else out first.
Wow.
They know what they're doing. Right?
Yeah.
So just because a child's saying something doesn't mean that's exactly what they want.
Right.
And plus, if they're not manipulating, it's also, they're confused depending on the age. Right? They don't really know what they want. And they don't really, and depending on how you ask it, like from all the training I get about questioning children and stuff, if you ask them a question that's yes, no, and they don't know the answer, they feel they need to answer, and they will always answer yes.
Right.
If they don't know the answer, they say yes.
Right.
Wow.
So dad says, do you want to live with me? And you, yes. Right?
Right.
And they got the answer they want. So it's a little bit more than what they're telling mom and dad sometimes.
I wish that we could just download this into the brain of every couple going through a divorce.
So do I. So do I.
Yeah.
So much of it really, I find, the divorces I'm dealing with, it's so much about education. It's just, you need to learn. You need to learn what you're doing to your children and learn more about your kids. That's one thing, and it's easy. So easy when you're in a marriage, you get in a family, and then your family's falling apart. You do tend to lose focus on your kids, which is sad, but it's true. And even like families that never fall apart, you get into a busy lifestyle. Lots of times the kids are just sort of over here. They're going to soccer, they're going to ballet, they're going to da-da-da-da, and they're going to school. You never actually have that sit down and get to know your kids. I find that lots, and the kids, and they'll tell me that's what they miss. That's their biggest loss, is I don't get my mom and talk about stuff I don't know. No one listens to me.
Because there's so much, preoccupation with everything else that's going on.
Yeah, so if parents just learn to do that. Honestly, parenting courses starting in grade 10. I'm serious. Like, get it before they even have children. Here's what it's like. Here's what's going on. Here's how it is.
Yeah. It strikes me sometimes too that kids, they're not necessarily telling untruths when they say, I want to spend more time with mom, and saying I want to spend more time with dad, because they probably do want to spend more time with both their parents. They just don't realize that that's not maybe a practical reality, but that's their heart speaking sometimes too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's unfortunately my job, is sort of, but here's the reality. And here's what's really, how are we going to make this work best for you? Even though what you want is impossible. The saddest, you have kids, I just wish the fighting would stop and mom and dad would get back together.
Right. Yeah.
And I guess that's why
I can't do much about that.
There's one in the Divorce Act, there's and the Family Law, there's one consideration when we decide on parenting, right? And that is what's in the best interest of the child. And then now we've got all this list in the new Divorce Act of the analysis and the different factors that can the non-constrained list. And one of those things is the desires of the child, what the child wants. But it's not the trump card.
Oh God, no. Oh no. No. And every child I meet from, 3 years old to 16, 17 years old, I have to make clear, you are not making the decision. Don't think that suddenly you're handed a power card, the trump card sort of thing. No. They have a voice. They don't make the final choice.
Well, I think sometimes a parent might feel that should have more weight than
they do.
Yeah.
They'll use it as a trump card. They'll try to use it as a trump card.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's not enough. Because kids, you get in situations that just because of what they want, sometimes you're right, and you sort of course you do. But then you look at the scenario, you really can't have that. I had a file where mom was a serious alcoholic. It's unfortunate, but we had to deal with the fact mom was an alcoholic and won't deal with it. To the point DUIs, and she'd be hospitalized for alcoholism, poisoning stuff. Yeah. This was a teenage girl who, guess where she wanted to stay? At mom's. And one of the big reasons is because it's free at mom's. There's no control at mom's. I get to do whatever I want at mom's. Mom lets me have the boyfriend over and we drink beer.
Right.
Best interest of the child isn't exactly, then you go live with your mom because you want to. No, unfortunately, we can't do that.
Yeah.
And luckily, as a teenager, even though that's what she says she wants and was fighting for that so hard, she knew deep down that was wrong.
Right.
Part of my job too sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old right now, and we
don't have gray hair yet?
I do. It's just on the sides, and I keep that shirt. I'm proud of my guys. But we remind them regularly that their brains are not fully formed yet, and they don't know they don't know really what they want. They think they want something, but they don't want the consequences of the thing that they want.
Right.
Yeah, that's totally. And that's actually one of the tests that I use, and whether we'll go into court. They're saying they want this, and they have these actually sometimes very rational reasons why, and legit, logical. And if they're doing that, I go, this is a valid request. Versus, That's a little irrational. That doesn't make any sense. And all you can say is because, because how many kids do that? Why? Because, right? Yeah, then no, you don't necessarily get that, right?
Right.
But if they can actually explain, sometimes, like, that's what I mean. Like, they are smart and sometimes smarter than their parents. And sometimes they've stepped back enough that they aren't the emotional baggage their parents are carrying about each other. They don't have that, so they can step back. This is how this should work. I've seen that. It blows my mind. Because mama's, and they'll even say, mama's like this, dad is like this. If I do, oh, right?
Yeah.
They're brilliant.
Yeah, kids become incredibly attuned to their parents' emotional landscapes, right? So they really are.
Yep.
They have a lot of insight into that sometimes.
Absolutely. I learned so much about the families, more than I would ever if I didn't talk to the children, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm never going to let you interview my children.
I have nieces and nephews. Well, now they're all adults. I have great nieces and nephews now who are little. And I have to be careful how I talk to them. Sometimes too, right? Oh, I'm grilling them again, right? Just play ball, Jeff. Just play ball, right? Instead of wanting to interview them. I'll be careful. But I don't really interview them like that.
Good.
No, I don't. Like we sit and play Lego and chat.
Right. I remember my principal saying, never use your skills of cross-examination on your spouse because you might win the argument, but it's probably not going to do favors for your marriage. Probably the same kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly the same, yes.
Okay, Jeff, can I rewind to something that you said before? Because I hear this a lot from clients. And usually the age is 12, but there's sort of this idea out there that as soon as a kiddo is 12, that they can start, like, then their opinion kind of carries all the weight, and then that's what gets to happen. Is that true or false?
Where does that come from?
I'll tell you where that comes from. It comes from Young and Young, the Supreme Court of Canada, years ago, sort of mentioned in that decision that what kids have to say, we have to start listening to, is a factor we should consider. And at a point where their brains are developed, where they can start thinking rationally, which is usually around 12. That's where it came from. But now it also comes from, because our Family Law Act, if someone is applying for guardianship, non-parent, anyone over 12, they have to consent and say yes. Right. So 12, well, they got to control that one, but even they don't consent, doesn't mean that they don't get guardianship, right? They don't understand that part. We just want to know what they're thinking and feeling. So that's where that comes from. Then also comes 16. I've also heard that one a lot, and that's from old, like, emancipation rules, which Canada doesn't have. So, but you hear this, my child wants to emancipate, or I want to emancipate. Okay, but we don't. I think Quebec actually has emancipation. That's it.
Of course they do, Quebec.
Yeah, we don't have emancipation. But the Children's Services Act, that we do know that they'll start finding homes for children to live independently around 16. So that's where that comes from.
Right.
But in Alberta and most of Canada, children do not get to make a decision about their own lives until they're 18.
Right.
As adults. But of course, as they get older, right? Mm-hmm. I've been in court many a times with a judge saying, like, 15-year-old, well, I can't make a 15-year-old do anything, right? It's just almost true, right? So how am I going to make them go see dad if they don't want to go see dad?
Yeah, I've seen that as well, around 15, 16. And that's usually what I tell clients is there's no magic age where all of a sudden now the child can decide where they want to live. But the older they get, the closer they get to the age of majority, the more weight what they want has. And the old saying, they'll vote with their feet.
Right.
At some point, you just can't, like...
You can drag them there to dad's, and they're just going to screw you and off again. Like, how many times do you do that before it gets dangerous?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it's no longer in their best interest.
Mm-hmm.
But luckily, like, normally that doesn't happen. Normally, children don't just run away and say, F you, I'm living with mom or dad. You know, normally that doesn't happen. Yep. I'm sure it happens sometimes, but I think most
I have those files.
Those are Jeff's clients.
Yeah. Those are Jeff's clients.
Yeah, I have a file of parent children have run away 5 times.
Yeah.
And both have ended up hospitalized attempting suicide 3 times.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think
That's another way of running away.
the biggest asset a child can have is like two parents that are working together to be that, you know, rationality, that developed brain that they don't have, and to help make those decisions for them. But, you know, in the throes of divorce, and if it's really emotional and acrimonious,
They can't do it. Yeah. No, I mean, I always explain to parents that the whole point of the Divorce Act, of the Family Law Act, dealing with parenting and child support as well, all of that is the goal through this whole process is to do less harm to those children. We want to keep them as safe in the same position as they've always been in, as they've been accustomed to, I guess, really. Which is like child support. We want to make sure they're still in hockey. Just because you broke up, you still get to do hockey. You still get to go dance. You still get to see mom and dad. And that's the whole point. They didn't do this. And I try to explain that to parents. Like, these kids didn't do this. This isn't their fault. Don't punish them for it. And that's how these kids feel sometimes. Like, well, and they're just left in the middle. And it's not fair. So, I always
Guys, a back to basics question. I feel like I'm stuck like a half an hour ago in the
fair enough.
non-legal world. I'm trying to wrap my head around, like, how are kids getting counsel? When does this happen? Does this happen often? Like, I am a non-legal person, and to me, I'm just like, what is happening here? How does this come to be?
Okay, well, let's rewind way back then for sure. Yes. Okay. Well, and yes, it happens a lot. I will say, like, I think right now I have about 100 kids, and that's just me. So what's happening is when parents separate and divorce, they have to determine parenting plans for the children, where they're going to live, what's going to happen. And the test, like said, is best interest of the child. One of the factors to consider that the courts have told us, and now has been enumerated in the Family Law Act, and now even enumerated in our Divorce Act, one of the factors to consider is the views and interests of the child. So where are they standing in this whole situation? Okay, and that we can go even further. That comes from the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which says a child has their views and opinions should be considered. And I'm actually getting to the point where that Convention of the Rights, they say they should be involved in any process that affects them. So I'm actually getting to the point where I will do and willing to do. They should be in that collaborative law process. They should be in that mediation. They should be in, you should hear them from the very beginning. And I will happily do that. So, but how the courts have sort of determined how we're going to find out what their views and interests are, there's a number of different ways. They could just go to psychologist, or parents can, if they're reasonable, can know what their children want. But if it gets to the point where the parents are basically can't get along, can't speak, aren't working together, and getting this high conflict disaster, and the children are stuck in the middle and not being heard, then sometimes they'll appoint a lawyer for that child. Okay, and so then I meet with the child. Depending on the age, like I said before, I've represented from 2 years old to 17 years old.
what?
And depending on the age, is what do I do, right? So when they get older and teenagers and whatnot, I can be just like any other lawyer. I'm just go in there, I fight, and I can hold back information the kids don't want you to know, and all this sort of stuff. And I'm a lawyer, full-on lawyer, fight. But lots of times they appoint me really as an amicus. It's a friend of the court. And what the court really wants to know. They don't want another lawyer going in there to create more havoc and argue and fight. That doesn't get us anywhere. So lots of times they just want me to go meet with the children, talk to them, get information. I'll also start talking to the schools if I feel that's necessary. I'll talk to the teachers, the doctors, there's doctors involved, a therapist, there's therapists involved. Try to pull all this information that isn't coming to the court, because mom and dad are just all over here going nuts. And I take that, and as an amicus, I spit it all out. Here's the good, here's the bad, here's the ugly. And boom. I always, no matter what position, here's what child tells me what they want. Here's why they want it. And then part of my job will be, and this is why they should have that, or this is why they shouldn't have that. Or here's a different option. Or here's some solutions. Lots of times that most of the time that is what the court wants, and that's my job. Sometimes as they're getting older, like 17 sort of thing, I'm going in, I'll fight for you. This is what you want, this is what you're getting. Sort of thing. Even though I don't get the final say. But at 17, I know I kind of do. So, right, as we said, once they're 17, you're going to listen. Does that make more sense, Kim?
It does. Like there's been stuff in social media lately around it had like a little thing flash across my screen where there was like the celebrity kids wanted to speak in court, but the court wouldn't let them. And then I knew that you were coming on the program, and I was thinking, what is the point at which it's a problem when we bring kids into this process? When does it become too much for them? And I was just really interested to hear everything that you were going to say today.
Yeah, well, yeah. So there's been lots of psychological tests and stuff, and talking to kids about this and whatnot, and because there is that concern, like, oh my God, we're going to harm them more. And actually, we aren't. It's been found we aren't. There's no greater harm in me meeting with them and dealing with them, and psychologists meeting with them and dealing with them, than the harm of no one talking to them in a divorce. They're stuck in a divorce. And it's basically, they're already traumatized. You can't traumatize them anymore. Sadly.
Right.
But also been found that they appreciate and actually are doing better if they have someone to talk to. Shocking.
Right. That makes sense.
So, of course. So if we get involved, and they just appreciate being heard. I've never had it. I've had some, I can't say that. Most of the time, they get whatever the decision is, even if it's not what they want, and they'll be fine. They just appreciate that someone heard what they want and you tried.
Mm-hmm.
But then I have had a few, you're right, who broke down in tears that they didn't get what they want. But
Right.
it's unfortunate. So
Right.
things like that happen. They need to be involved. And that's why I'm at the point. Let's just involve them. They're in it. They're stuck in it anyways. So why are we waiting? And that's what's happening right now. We're waiting till it's already at this high conflict war zone. Before, Jeff, go help, right? I bet I could have probably done something better 2 years ago.
Right.
Before they were in this big mess in court and the trial's coming up, and then they call Jeff or call someone.
Right.
I bet you 2 years ago I might have been able to sat down with these kids and at the very beginning, it's okay, what's going on, and come up with some solutions.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually am pushing for that now.
So I have a few questions about that. I guess first one I'm going to follow up on is when you talk about involving the kids in the process, another thing that I get asked is, will my kid be able to come and testify at court? Are they going to be able to come and participate in the trial or in a hearing?
In Alberta, that's not happening much. In some other jurisdictions, that actually happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can't remember the state. There's actually one state down the states that has it, and so they're always being talked to by a judge. It's been set up that way.
Oh, so, interesting.
But there's also a question of how valuable is it, because it's one meeting with the judge. Woo woo. You know what I mean? So, but here they don't like it. They really don't like bringing the kids into that process. They don't to testify. Here's the problem: to testify, you're now putting a child literally on the spot.
Right.
Mom and dad are there in court.
Right.
Plus, then mom and dad have to question their kid in a legal process, and then our parent, I'm not doing that to my kid. Right. And so you might have the one parent, oh yeah, I'm going to do it. We're going to question, grill. And I can't do this harm. And so they won't question the child. And then that harms their case. Right. So if you don't question a witness, you've harmed your case. So they really hate doing that. What's starting, and I have there's a bit of a trend happening a bit. Some judges have agreed just to meet them separately. I've done where I go with them. So it's just me, judge, child, or children in a room and just have a conversation. I've done that, especially in JDRs. So we don't need to have recording. We don't need a testimony on tape. So we've had JDRs where, yes, the kids come in, we all sit down in a separate room, and then the judge goes back in to see the parents, and I've talked to your kids. Right? I've done that a lot. And now there is one judge in Calgary who actually fairly often will have the kids come in and it's in court, but she kicks the parents out. The parents' lawyers are allowed to be there. And then the child's lawyer, if there is a child's lawyer, and a court clerk, so it is being recorded. But she doesn't necessarily tell the parents what the children said.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Right?
Yeah. So they could go find out and read the transcript or something, but
she's trying to find out. It's hard. Like these are still kids. Like the whole, it's weird. But we know kids testify in other situations. So
yeah.
I mean, it can be done. It's just not the best. It's last resort.
Right.
Especially, and I'll have kids, especially teenagers. I want to talk to the judge. I want to tell the judge, blah, blah, blah. Of course you do. And so, well, that's my job. That's why I'm here. I'm your lawyer. I'm not your mom's lawyer or dad's. I'm your lawyer. So my job is to be your mouth in court, right?
Right.
But what I have done then in situations, if you want, write out what you want to tell the judge and I will read it to the judge, or I see if the judge will take a letter from you.
Right.
Right. And so, but warning, right? This will be public, which means your mom and dad are going to see it too. So anything you want to say, you got to make sure. So I've tried to do it that way. And some judges will agree. Some judges won't. They won't take the letter. But some have. Some have let me just read in, or especially teenagers though, even if I'm amicus, I am a lawyer and I still give them that right to be heard and what they want said. And I'll even take notes. What do you want me to tell the judge? And we clarify at the end, this is what you want. Yes. And so, okay. I'll make sure the judge hears all of that. And they feel better.
Yeah. I have lots of questions that are coming up. So I guess as far as you spoke a little bit or touched on something about sharing information or not sharing information that kiddos share with you. So, I mean, I guess I'm assuming that if they were to disclose abuse or something like that, that might be one of the things that you'd have to do. But aside from situations like that, are you and the child making decisions about what information you're sharing with who?
Lots of times, yes, absolutely. Even like the young ones. Because I am still a lawyer. Like, if they just wanted a psychologist, they would have hired a psychologist. So I'm still a lawyer and explain to them. And even if it is amicus, I still have to develop a strong relationship with these kids to get information from them.
Right.
This isn't adults. These are kids that are holding on to stuff and they're not necessarily going to say anything if they don't trust me. And if I break that trust, I'm in trouble.
Right.
So from the very beginning, I teach them solicitor-client confidentiality. In words they understand. Right? So like everything we say in here, like so basically, I can't repeat unless you let me. Right? You get to go out if you want to go and tell anybody anything we talk about. You can, but I can't. Kind of a weird rule, right? Explain that. So if there's anything while we talk, and like things will slip out and stuff sometimes, and teenagers, I hear things like, oh dear God. But if it's not necessary, if that's some, but don't tell mom. Say it and make sure I make a mark on my notes. Don't tell mom.
Right.
And I don't tell mom. Right. And I make sure it doesn't. If it gets to a point that there's some information that this is important. Like judge needs to hear this, mom and dad need to hear this. This is going to really help and affect what is decided. I'll have that conversation with them and get them to, so please let me tell them, please, sort of thing. And usually they will.
Right.
If I explain, here's why they need to hear this. And then I get it's going to, sometimes it's pretty personal stuff. And I said, but if they know this actually might help. And so, okay, fine. I try. Like, I need to build that trust. I can't just have them and me go in, blah. I'd be the tattletale, right? I mean, then you're in trouble.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Then they never want to talk to me again.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And then they hear, oh, well, mom comes back and says, oh, well, I heard in court today that, you told your lawyer that.
Yep. It happens all the time. Yeah. Mom said, you said. Yeah.
I mean, we get that certainly without child's counsel in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Was that the dad saying that or the child?
The child usually.
So
Yeah.
Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about the lines of communication then that you have with the parents and information sharing? Do you share the same information with both parents? Who's bringing kiddo to appointments? What does that like actual process look like?
Well, my process is slowly changing actually, which is interesting. But
Okay.
I've always been, I do not talk to the parents. I don't want them to, and I don't want it to be seen, especially in a waiting room and stuff. I'll be, I'm nice, like, hi, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And you'll have the odd parent, can we talk for a minute?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And want to pull me aside.
mm-hmm.
Then my child clients are, what the hell are they talking about? Like, I've sometimes wrecked the trust of my client because I'm talking to the other party privately, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
So I've always been, no, I do not have any conversations with the parents. I ask very beginning when to get the order, open a file before I even meet with the kids. I will ask for copies of the court documents. That's what gives me the background. So I look, what's going on, what's the argument, what's the issues. I can read the affidavits and stuff, and so I know. And that helps also me to direct when I'm questioning the kids too, right? Because I can't, and I never will, like, without that information. So what are mom and dad fighting about, right? I can't do that. So I have to kind of know and then sort of lead them down paths sometimes to get what I'm trying to find. But get that information and know what's going on.
Right.
And then I try, if possible, alternate who brings the child in to see me. So, and my assistant makes those calls. I won't even call them. I made that mistake, and of course they'll use that as an opportunity to tell me everything. And I know you just ruined it. You've biased me. I don't want to hear it. Right? So my assistant now does all the calls, sets all the appointments, and we try to take turns. So if mom will bring them in the second time, dad brings them in the next time, or whatever. That doesn't always happen, but I do try my best. And sometimes, depending on what's going on, right, it'll be like, I use that also as a test. Because if mom brings them in and you start questioning, talking to them, sometimes at the beginning, or sometimes you slip it in the middle, sort of. So, did mom tell you to tell me anything today?
Right.
Did dad tell you anything to tell me today? Like, I can't. But I'll find out there's been some sort of parental influence and whatnot. I can also see there's sometimes very different coming in with mom or coming in with dad. I will sometimes. Now we don't have reception, but when we used to have receptionists sitting out there pre-COVID, I'd sometimes purposely leave them in the waiting room and have the receptionist watch. Just kind of weird, but how did they interact out there?
Right. Right.
Or I come out quietly and I'll sort of see, and I can sort of see if they're like sometimes like kids over here, dad's over here. Interesting. Versus, they're right on top of each other, laughing, giggling on a game.
Right. Snuggled up together, sharing a moment. You
start observing things like that too, for sure. Yeah. And if that doesn't work, sometimes I have set up almost surprise visits at schools. So if I'm really concerned that there's been some parental influence, and every time a parent knows there's a meeting. Yeah. Right. So if parents don't know there's a meeting, is that right? And I've always made a point when I make the appointment when mom brings in, that's done separately and dad doesn't necessarily know. And, right. And so when dad brings the child in, mom doesn't necessarily know. And I do that on purpose too. Parents get angry at me for doing that. Well, I have a right to know. But no, you don't. Right. Okay, so I'm allowed to do that. Figure it out from there.
Okay. We're siblings in all this. Like, we've been talking about a one child and one counsel situation, and I'm trying to figure out what happens with the siblings. Are they in these meetings as well?
Yeah, I have lots of families. Absolutely. I just finished to file 6 kids. Who has 6 kids still? But
Evan does.
Well, hold on. You might want to tell my wife that she thinks.
only has 5. Where's the 6?
I'll let her listen to this episode.
Anyways, lots of kids. So then it gets interesting. It can get very interesting. And depending on the situation, sometimes they need separate lawyers. Okay, so that one with the 6 kids, it just blew my mind. There were 6 kids. So we actually basically split up. 3 would come one day, 3 a different day, because 6, each child separately. Like, I treat them as each separate individuals. They each have different opinions. They each have different thoughts. Sometimes I will throw them in together for a bit, and just interesting to watch the interactions. And sometimes the interesting to watch, oh, you're influencing that one. I don't know, right? And then maybe you have to split. Sorry.
I'm just thinking, if my parents divorced when I was young, we had the maximum number at home. I think there probably would have been 10 children. Because there's 12 in my family.
Wow.
So that would have been fun.
Be a busy week.
I heard somewhere that there's a correlation between number of children and likelihood of getting divorced, and the higher the number of children, the lower the likelihood gets. My guess is because the parents are exhausted and can't bother to think about getting a divorce.
Because they can't afford to get divorced.
That as well. There's no spousal support coming there because it's all going to be child support.
Exactly. No, and then you'd have to deal with 12 on your own during your parenting time.
Yeah. So if you're worried about maybe like divorce proofing your relationship, just keep having kids.
Yeah, no.
This is where we run the banner. This is not.
Yeah, please.
This is not legal advice.
Edit this. This is not legal advice. No, because too often we see they're trying to save a marriage by having a child.
More children will not save your relationship in red letters.
The marriage saving baby.
Yeah.
It's
always first, right?
More stress. No, it creates more stress
every time.
Yeah, they're divorced in a year. Yeah, don't do
Yeah, that's like, getting pregnant to save the dating relationship.
Yeah.
Works every time.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. But to answer your question, Kim, yes, like lots of times there's multiple children and they're all getting interviewed. It's different. I had a file just recently. There's 3 kids. The judge has decided on his own that the 5-year-old's too young and you don't need to talk to her. So I just talked to the other 2 kids, which is kind of weird. Right? So, right? So this 5-year-old has no say.
Right.
It's kind of weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I have another file right now where there's been some abuse, and so the 2 brothers have been abused by an older brother. So I have the 2, and the older brother has a different lawyer.
So there might be like discrete legal issues going on why you might need to split a sibling group or.
Yeah. Well, it could be a conflict. Like I might have say for those 5 kids, 3 of them want to live with dad, and 2 of them want to live with mom.
Right.
And depending, I might be able to work it. But if there's no, I can't. Like, how do I fight for mom's the best parent and dad's the best parent?
Yeah.
Becomes tough. So you're okay. We're going to split this up.
Right. My mom would say you can't argue out of both sides of your mouth.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mom's a wise woman.
It's true.
Now, was she saying that to you, Heather?
Probably.
No, I don't. I don't know. No comment.
You should be a lawyer when you grow up.
I think maybe that was kind of, I think that's what it kind of was.
I never got that. I didn't want to be a lawyer when I grew up.
It never seems to be a compliment when they say it like that.
No, it never is. No.
So can anybody be a lawyer for a kid, or is there special courses and?
That's a good question, Kim. Right now, there actually really is no regulations, no rules, no anything. It's wild, wild west in a way, but not really. So, because others have created some. While the Law Society doesn't say any rules, there's no rules, but through legal aid, where I'm at, for them to issue a certificate to act for a child, they have set some guidelines. They want 5 years experience as a lawyer. They want that you've taken some interviewing children classes and whatnot. There's more and more training coming available, and I understand legal aid's getting even more formal on that, and soon we might actually see a whole real rules and regulations on setting it up. But that's just legal aid. So if you get a legal aid certificate, but then the Office of the Child and Youth Advocate, out of their office, they deal with the lawyers who act for children in child welfare matters, which is slightly different than what I do. And so that office also has training and requirements to get on their list of lawyers that they'll assign those files to. So again, they're controlling it. Back in the day, so a lot of this started here in Alberta in 2005. Justice, can't remember her name now, she's long retired, set up a training session. It was 4 days at the courthouse. I remember that. We were all sweltering in the basement of the courthouse for 4 days of intensive we had psychologists come in and give us a whole day's class in child development, all sorts of stuff. And then she created the rule at court that you couldn't act for a child unless you had that course.
Mm.
That was 2005, so it's kind of hard to stick to that rule now.
Right.
As lots of new lawyers have never had an opportunity to take that course. It's never been offered again. So,
Right.
I know. So we've done some internalized training. LRCY, the Office of Child and Youth, they've done some training sessions as well. So we're trying to get back into some sort of more formalized training for this. But
I mean, I would say, Kim, that there's a general rule that is supposed to prevent a lawyer from taking any file on that they're not competent to act on.
yeah,
And so then you might ask the question, well, how do you ever become competent to act on any file?
true.
But I mean, so and that would be where, the courses that Jeff is talking about coming in would be very helpful, because that would be a good starting point where now you feel confident as a lawyer to take on a file with perhaps mentorship from somebody who has experience doing that file. But lawyers aren't supposed to just, like, for example, I wouldn't represent a child. I've never done it before. I've never even thought about it. And I know that there's so much that I don't know about issues that I'd have to be watching for and how to handle the child that, I just wouldn't do it.
Right.
But there are lawyers that probably would that shouldn't, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, there are. It happens. I mean, we can't control it all, unfortunately. I mean, we just found out recently that one of the lawyers who did get a legal aid certificate, trained, handed it off to their articling student.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So that articling student will have the experience when they...
Oh, no. Not a good idea. So, because it is, it's really easy to start feeding things to your kids. It's really easy to not do right with the children. Like, if I question them the wrong way, I'll just get information I want.
Mm-hmm.
I can manipulate children so easy. We all can, right? So,
like taking candy from a baby.
yeah, literally, right? So, I guess not literally, does it?
Yeah, but that's the saying, right? Like that's why it's like,
Yes, it's easy.
hey, can I have that candy?
Yeah. Your mom's really mean, isn't she?
Mm.
It's not too hard to get there, right? So
Yeah.
you do need, and it's a skill, and actually, I just did more training on interviewing again this spring, because you have to refresh and remember, because it's so easy, especially some teenagers and stuff. Them you do start treating a bit more as adults and group questioning a bit more, but still you have to be careful. But it's so easy to fall back out of that pattern. It's so easy to start getting into a pitter-patter chat, playing Lego, and oh wait, no, I need to focus back on how I'm supposed to be getting this information out of it. And it's just mining.
Right.
How you call it. It's just mining the information out of them as you're sort of bringing up topics, bringing up issues. Right?
Mm.
Draw me a picture of your family and tell me about them all. Sort of things like that. Like, I never said, tell me about dad.
Right.
Right? It's more, yeah. And then some of the trainings, like how to use different toys and different things. There's tools and stuff that are required.
This has been very, very interesting to me, because I have no experience in that, in children being represented at all. And so It's a great glimpse behind the curtain you're giving us, Jeff. Really. And I
Do
really
you want
hope
to do it now? Because it's fun.
not particular.
Fair enough.
I really hope that our listeners are going to get a lot of value from this too. I mean, I certainly will be sending people here if they are thinking about, is it right for their situation? Is it something that they should pursue for their children based on their situation? This is definitely, I think, going to be a great resource for people to be able to just learn more about it and how it can help them.
And it can be helpful, absolutely. I think there's been, for a while, I noticed there's a bit of a trend in provincial court where the judges would be like, neither mom and dad have lawyers. So they'd be like, oh, get the kids a lawyer. Throw Jeff in this.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, actually.
It does happen. I haven't noticed it lately, and I don't know if COVID has sort of maybe slowed things down a bit in that sense. But for a while, I was getting a lot of those files. But this is where I started changing my mind about things too, because like, oh, you guys aren't really fighting. You just need a mediator, and you need some. And I would jump in, and we'd sometimes solve some of these things within months, because I met with your kid, and this is what your kid's saying, and this is. And if they understand, if they do know their child, they go, yeah, that's my kid. Yeah, that makes sense. I see what he's saying. Yep, okay. They're just scared to tell you right now because you guys are going crazy. But let me help. Solve them. So I really am getting to that point. Like, maybe we should be jumping in early and sort of figuring out some of these things. They have a right to be involved in the whole process anyways. Right?
And I can certainly see that that's a huge value add there, a really helpful bit of information if it's coming through someone who is objective, right? You don't have skin in the game. You're not mom's lawyer or dad's lawyer or the other parent's lawyer. You're there for the child. So you can come and point out
that neutral in many ways.
Yeah, and you can kind of point out both sides of what's going on. And well, I mean, I want to hear a little bit, maybe this is a good, I hope that this program is a good soapbox for people too, to talk about their dreams of where they would like to see family law going. And I know I've stood on the soapbox a couple of times, but you said earlier that you'd like to see maybe kids involved earlier on or involved in the collaborative process or in mediation. So like, tell me a bit about that. I'm really interested in like what that would look like and how kiddos could get involved. And can I do it in my practice?
Absolutely, you could.
How can we be bringing them in?
Well, in the collaborative process, just if everyone agrees, let's get someone to work with our child and bring the child's voice in. Done. Easy, right? And then you just retain a lawyer.
Yeah.
And have them come in, and then I honestly do think it might, in some situations, be extremely helpful. Then I would just come to your collaborative law meetings. Like, hey, I met with the children. I've done sort of all the stuff I would do any other situation.
Yeah.
Instead of going to court and talking to a judge or sitting in a JDR, I'm sitting in a collaborative meeting with you guys and say, yeah, well, this is what they're saying.
Is there anything preventing that right now, or it just doesn't happen?
Just doesn't happen.
I think it just doesn't happen. Yeah.
So here's the part that confuses me now, because I don't really know a lot about the law. So it sounded like before you had to get a court order to get a lawyer for your kid. But if it's in collaborative law, then you wouldn't do that, I'm guessing. You would just retain a lawyer? Is that how that changes?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, you need a court order, but like I said, if both parents agree, they can get a consent court order.
Okay.
Right. In the collaborative process, you wouldn't even need the court order. Because in collaborative, it's all by agreement. So you would just make sure together you would pick the one lawyer that you know would be neutral, haven't been involved, and go and move forward. For sure you can. I know, like right now, sometimes in collaborative you retain a psychologist to do the voice of the child thing sometimes. Right? So just be no different.
Yeah, I think, Kim, children don't have standing before the court to by default to come before the court, I think. And that's why it's related to, in order to come before a court represented by a lawyer, they'd have to need a court order to do that. But in collaborative law, those rules don't apply.
Well, I'm also looking in the process. Sometimes I get a little weird and I want to do weird things, but why can't a say, especially a teenager, say, I want a lawyer and come see me.
Mm-hmm.
And then let me make that application and go into court of their divorce and say, going to add the kid now. Hi, I'm here. I'd
Mm-hmm.
love to do that because what's happening and why this is all planting in my head is I guess I've done this long enough that people know who I am. So there'll be psychologists calling me saying, I'm working with this kid in this divorce, and I think this kid would really do well as a lawyer.
Mm.
Can we get you? And well, no, you can't. Like, unfortunately, no, you can't.
Right.
But, I had suggested, but I'll talk to them if they want to talk. But I
Right.
can't be their lawyer.
Right.
And I think that I should be able to.
Like intervener status,
Yeah,
almost, in a way,
yeah.
or something,
Well, and
right?
I found nothing here yet. I'm doing some sort.
Yeah.
I did find a couple cases in Ontario where Ontario has their own office of the children's lawyer.
Oh.
Office. Yeah.
Huh.
And in that situation, what happened is the child had a lawyer there, done through the process, but then file closed and stuff. Then it all blew up again. Kid ran away and then went back to the lawyer. Parents at that point don't even know where the child is, but the lawyer does.
Whoa. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Spicy.
Yeah.
Huh.
So she jumped in and go, maybe let's go. Maybe I should be back on. And there was a big fight.
Huh.
But why not? These kids have a right to be part of this process. They're part of the family. That's
Yeah.
my soapbox. If you're going
Right.
to send your clients to watch this, my soapbox is remember your damn kids in this mess. Like, honestly, that's just the biggest message. They're part of this. They are not sofas. You're not fighting over property anymore. You're fighting over human beings who
Yeah.
have emotions, brains, feelings. You need to keep those in mind when you're doing this stuff. And if you don't, you're ruining your children. And it's sad.
That's a great message to come from the soapbox. I like it.
Always been my soapbox.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you sadly pointed to the examples before of some of your clients had attempted suicide. And I know we've chatted in previous episodes about how high conflict divorces are considered adverse childhood experiences, and they can cause effects
It's trauma.
that are akin to actual brain damage in children. So, like, you really are literally messing up your kids' brains if you engage in this protracted kind of high level conflict.
Yes. Well, I sent you that link to the Brain Story, the Family Wellness Center.
Yes,
The government of Alberta has set up this family wellness initiative, and there's a website, and they talk about the brain story and how trauma and abuse and all this stuff is affecting development of a brain. And there's one, it's just a little cartoon. It's very short, and I do sometimes send it to parents. You should watch this. It does explain how. And nerve connections change. You have changed your child physically by doing this.
Yeah.
And it's not in a positive way.
Right.
Right. And lots of us heard that, well, but I'm not abusing my child. No, but this is enough trauma. It's hurting your child.
Yeah.
Fine, you're not out there, beating him in the backyard with a stick, but you're causing trauma to this child. Right?
Yeah. You're changing, their neurochemistry and how they respond to stress then throughout the rest of their lives and their relationships as they grow older.
They develop, exactly. Yep. And that's one thing I do have to be cautious of with my job too, right? I'll have how come you haven't met with my kids in a long time? You should be meeting my kid again. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Every time I meet with your child, I rip open that wound. I am tearing that scab off and making them, let's discuss this again. Right?
Yeah.
So it's important to really limit how often, get the information you need, do what you need to do, but you're not regularly meeting. I'm not the therapist.
Right.
The therapist should be seeing them more often, probably, but not me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a bad situation. You see them. But I also see, like I said before, almost some healing in that they're finally being heard.
Yeah.
And they actually think something's happening. Oh, they're listening to me. I am part of this. I am important.
Mm. Finally getting a voice
Yeah.
in between all the, in amongst all the noise that's going on.
That's all I want.
Mm.
Yeah. That's all they need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's a very important role that you play, Jeff. And I know you're well respected among we lawyers. I know the bench respects you and respects your role. And just thank you. Thank you for all the work you do for kiddos and families. And
I don't need thanks because the thanks is seeing these kids happy. Honestly.
Yeah.
Sounds
Yeah.
sort of cliche, I know, but
Yeah.
I just changed one life. But they're kids, so it does count, right? Like,
Of course. Absolutely. It does. Yeah. All right. Any more questions? Kim, you didn't ask your money question.
a money question.
I'm stuck doing budgets and money all the time, but I worry that people don't seek out certain types of assistance because they don't know what something costs and what they're in it for. Like, how many meetings could they expect and what would that cost? So yes, that's always a question that's on my mind. And Heather, I do appreciate you bringing that up. Literally,
and that's fair.
Just
You're right. It's another expense. It is one more expense, obviously, and I am one more expense. Here's the beauty: is if it is a high conflict case, and so legal aid takes it where I work, legal aid will take any high conflict case. They do not care about the financial requirements of the parents because the child is the client and the child's poor. So I can have any child from any family, any level of wealth, and still being charged at the legal aid rate of $92.40. Right? And normally the order will state that mom pays half, dad pays half. So you're now paying $46
Right.
an hour for me to be involved.
Right.
That's not so bad. So now, of course, there are lawyers in private practice who are doing this, and they're charging, of course, much more, and that makes it tough. But even then, sometimes it's not that expensive all the time. Sometimes, like I said, if you get us early or get us, and we can sometimes nip this in the bud pretty fast. Or just hearing the voice is a wake-up call for many parents. Like, oh shit, and I have seen that. Like, I'm quoting a parent. Oh shit! Right? Like, oh, or I've seen parents cry. I go in there and now I've gotten them crying because they're finally realizing what they've done, and then we can start fixing it. And so it doesn't necessarily cost that much money. In private practice, what some people are doing, hiring lawyers just to do a voice of the child report and a moment in time meeting. So it'll be like, seriously, that's only about 3-4 hours.
Right.
Okay. For me, depending on what's going on, I've had files where I've seen in the end, it's only been, didn't take me too long. I had a meeting, usually at least 2 meetings with the kids, because one with mom, one with dad, go through the documents, meet with the parents, we're done. It might be 6 hours.
Right.
At $92.40 an hour, is that worth it?
Mm-hmm.
For your kids?
Yes. The answer is yes, listeners. It is worth it.
But at the same time, I have high conflict files, right? So let's not kid ourselves. It's rarely 6 hours on those files.
Right.
You've heard me. I had a file I'm working with this kid since she was 12. I've got files I feel like sometimes I'm stepdad or had something with someone because I've just been with these children for so long. And watching them grow up, and that starts adding up. Of course it does.
Yeah. Right.
Files are this thick sometimes. So
You got to go digital, Jeff. You said your files are this big. You gotta scan those.
I know. But you have to remember, some of my stuff in my file is I can't go digital if I'm playing Lego. I'm trying to scribble notes and play Lego at the same time. Just don't make me type on a tablet. You know what I mean? So, I thought, oh, yeah. Plus, some of the things we do is like, oh, here's the picture Bobby colored. That's in my file too, right?
Right.
All this stuff is in my file.
Yeah.
Pictures of some of the Lego things they've done are on my file. So, it's thick, but the big ones are going to cost money no matter what.
Is there anything we didn't cover that you've just been dying to tell everyone?
I don't think so. I got on my soapbox. I want parents to understand what they're doing to their children when they're going through this, and to remember them and keep them in mind when they're trying to make up these plans, and be real about this. And set it aside. Just set it aside, people. So you like it or not. And here's another part of my soapbox. Like it or not, if you're getting divorced or separated, you don't get to run away from each other. You are stuck with each other till your children are gone. And that's not 18.
Yeah.
There's still going to be a marriage. There might be a university grad. There might be grandchildren. Crikeys, you want to spend time with your grandchildren? Better spend time with your children. You know, like, you have to work this out. You're not walking away. It's not a couch where the couch is then put in your living room and you forget about it.
I think Heather and I have preached that same message on here before as well. It's like, you got to think long term. You got to think, picture the graduation. Are you there? Are you both there?
Yeah.
What does that look like? Does it become more about you, or is it about your children and you're just there peacefully, both enjoying the experience?
Yes, you better learn to get along with each other. Like, you don't have to love each other anymore, but you're still parents. You're still, like, that family is still there. You're still family. And in the eyes of your child, you're still family. So you can't just, that bastard, you know, and forget about them. Or you're going to push your child away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
it's important.
Yeah. And ironically, those communication and cooperation skills sometimes can become more important after a separation because you're not sharing those moments. You're not there in the same home, seeing what's happening with the kids, hearing what happened with their friend at school last Tuesday or whatever it is. So those things and those skills become even more important sometimes and need to be worked on and honed and all of that stuff.
Skills that perhaps if they had learned and worked on
in grade 10
earlier.
Grade 10. This should all start in grade 10. It should.
Yeah.
Should they not learn about what marriage really is in grade 10? Should they learn what it means to have a child in grade 10?
Yeah, they learn about sex. They learn about the mechanics of it.
Whoop-de-woo-woo. Right?
You're going to figure that out anyway.
Yeah. I'm so old that we didn't have sex ed. I figured it out.
Right. But we got to make sure we teach them that. But don't teach them any of the stuff about what to do after.
There are consequences.
There
are consequences. They got to learn.
Yeah.
I think, well, and even teach them about child support. Honestly. Like, this is what it's all about. This is what a family is. This is what a child is. This is what it's going to be like. So maybe he'll be a little more careful.
Yeah.
Grade 10.
Yeah.
Grade 10.
Yeah.
All right, you convinced me. I'm getting my my 10th grader into parenting preparation. Maybe I'll put him in the parenting after separation course.
Suppose you could.
I love it. I want to hear feedback on how that goes.
It was slip of the tongue, but it's actually what is brilliant parenting preparation course. There's a marriage prep courses. Why isn't there a parenting prep courses? And then I'll go further. Why the hell don't you have to take it before you have a baby? But you can't force that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I guess.
You need a license to drive a car. You don't need a license to raise a child.
Kim McDonald.
I think Jeff has done an extremely good job explaining all of this today, and I've found this one of the most interesting podcasts we've done. And I don't have children, and I don't know anything about this. I don't have kids either. I think you've done a really good job.
There's the real irony. I do not have children and do not want children.
Thank you for coming on the program, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope I was helpful.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. Great.
Absolutely.
Good.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of Access to Justice. Thanks for listening or watching, however you've taken in today's episode. If you have any questions you'd like us to answer on the podcast, send an email to access2justice@gmail.com. Oh, I'm sorry, access2justicepodcast@gmail.com. That's with the number 2. And we'll do our best to get you an answer on an upcoming episode. Thank you.
Bye.
Any information in this video is general information only and is not, nor is it intended to be, legal advice. Watching this video does not create a lawyer-client relationship. You should always seek the advice of a lawyer or other qualified professional for advice regarding your individual situation. While we take care to ensure that the information contained in this video is accurate and up to date, we make no warranties or representations as to the suitability, completeness, or accuracy of the information contained in this video. Any reliance you place on the information is at your own risk. Kahane Law Office, Merrick Law, Heather Malarick Professional Corporation, Evan Clark Professional Corporation, Evan Clark, Heather Malarick, and any guests will not be responsible nor liable in any way for any content, including but not limited to any errors or omissions in the content, or for any loss or damage of any kind incurred as a result of any content communicated in this video, whether by Evan Clark, Heather Malarick, or by a third party. Kim McDonald is a financial advisor with Raymond James Limited. Information provided is not a solicitation, and although obtained from sources considered reliable, is not guaranteed. The view and opinions contained in this media are those of Kim McDonald, not Raymond James Limited. Securities-related products and services are offered through Raymond James Limited, member Canadian Investor Protection Fund. Insurance products and services are offered through Raymond James Financial Planning Limited, which is not a member Canadian Investor Protection Fund. Raymond James advisors are not tax advisors, and we recommend that clients seek independent advice from a professional advisor on tax-related matters. Insurance products and services are offered through Raymond James Financial Planning Limited, RJFP, a subsidiary of Raymond James Limited, which is not a member Canadian Investor Protection Fund. When providing life insurance products, financial advisors are acting as insurance representatives of RJFP.
Darkness of the dales dissipates, declines because of he who